Welcome to the fifth episode of the iGaming Next podcast. Today, we have Jesper Svensson, CEO of Betsson Group, with us today. How are you doing today, Jesper?
I'm doing really well, Pierre. Thank you very much for having me.
Great. And I think we have a lot of very interesting things to talk about today. I'd like to start actually by talking about both of our home country, Sweden.
Yes.
It's something we've talked a lot about now in the recent podcasts, and I think I'm really excited to talk to you about this. Obviously, there's been some changes in the regulation recently in Sweden. They have tightened it up a lot for the regulated operators. And I'd like to hear a little bit about your opinion in general. Like, how is this affecting Betsson, and what do you think about the changes?
Yes, there are a few proposed changes that are, to some degree, still being debated, where there are limitations within the regulatory frameworks for those operators. And I think we speak a lot about the channelization in Sweden. If we start with the core thing immediately, and for a regulation to be successful, it requires that the channelization is very, very good on a certain level. And I think the regulators have set out to achieve 90% channelization in Sweden. What we see now is that that is not the case. So channelization is estimated on in particular on the casino side to be closer to 70%, and that means that players are already today playing outside the regulation, and that's of course not what the regulator want to achieve. It's not good for the companies that are regulated and do follow the regulation. So it's important that the measurements that are happening are not being counterproductive and push even more players outside the regulated framework, and I think that is at risk.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we've talked about this previously in the podcast as well. That it seems a little bit sometimes that the regulator perhaps is not taking the best decisions for the players necessarily, but it seems that they want to be more and more strict towards the regulated operators rather than the unregulated ones. Is there anything they can do towards the unregulated operators? Like, how would you increase the channelization by restricting the unregulated operators?
I would say the best way to increase the channelization is to work with the regulated operators and make sure that the regulation in itself becomes more successful by having measurements that caters for that regulation. When you speak about operators outside the regulation, I mean, if you don't do marketing towards Sweden specifically and so forth, you quite frankly, you're not breaking laws unless you target Sweden, have a Swedish site, and do marketing towards the Swedish consumer. But there are many players that go out in the online world and find those operators regardless. So I think the best way to increase the channelization is to focus together with the regulated operators how you can make this as best as possible. You have to have a better dialogue than what we're having today. It's still a relatively new regulation, but
sorry to interrupt you there, Jesper, but are you actually communicating with the regulator on an active level, or are they kind of more separate to you?
Yeah, I would say, to give an example, we work in 12 different jurisdictions in Betsson, and so we work with 12 different regulators, and of course it varies from regulator to regulator how you do and how you interact with the industry, but some are doing it really well, and it's a very good dialogue, and it's a clarity over what the regulator wants, and there is also a possibility for the industry to go back and together help to form good outcomes. That is not yet the case in Sweden. I mean, regulators and the regulated companies, they work towards the same goal. I mean, that's obvious. We have to have functional regulation in order to be successful, both from a company point of view and a regulator point of view. So it's hard when that dialogue is not in place to the level that it could be, and it quite frankly should be. So I think there is more work to be done there, and hope that that will just be better over time. I think the vast majority of the regulated operators, they genuinely work towards following the regulation in the best way they can. Of course, there can be mistakes happening, and there can be some operators that think differently, but the vast majority are serious companies that really do follow the regulations. So if you don't have the clarity around the regulation, then it occurs situations that is not good for anyone.
Do you think that there is some clarity in the Swedish regulation?
I think it has been. And I think to some degree the clarity we have been getting is not through a dialogue with the regulator, it has been through fines. So that is not the best way to start off a relationship, I would say, because it's easier than to have that dialogue and work out together, okay, to fully understand all the different paragraphs within the regulation.
Yeah, actually, a friend of mine, Henrik Andersson of Supernation, I asked him this question as well once, if the regulation is unclear, and his opinion was that he did not think it was unclear, but he said that what it means, if you look into the regulation, is that you have to take kind of, so, or at that point at least, the actions that you have to take is so dramatic in the beginning, so it's kind of almost unreasonable to ask that of an operator when it came out. But I guess now, after some more time, this was last year. Now after some time, I think maybe that is becoming more clear, kind of, to the operators what ways you have to take.
Well, yeah, I think, to some degree, when it's very open and broadly defined, it doesn't make it necessarily clear in that sense. So I think some things even needs to go to the courts now in order to get clarity of the situation. But I genuinely believe that a lot of those things could have been solved a long time ago through a better dialogue. And I have to go back to that. Regulators and the regulated companies, they are working towards the same goals. It's not good for anyone if consumers choose to play outside the regulation, because there will always be companies where the customers are. So there is a danger that side increases further, and that would mean that the regulation has not been as successful as it was intended to be.
Yeah, of course. It's that balancing act, right, between kind of keeping the operators where you want to kind of protect the customers as much as possible, but also making sure that they don't go to unregulated operators. And it's not an easy balancing act, that either. I mean, would you say that there are any, like, what would be a market you would say who have gotten it right? Like, what regulation?
That have gotten it right. I think, each market needs to look at also what is the specific for their market and adapt that into the regulation. I think if you look at if you look at Denmark, that was seen as a very good regulation for a long period of time, clear over what the regulated wanted, and so forth. And even one regulation that is a strict regulation is the UK regulation, but it's also a clarity in what the regulator wants, and they give very good guidance to what you should do and what you shouldn't do within that framework. I think if I look at where I sit myself today, I mean, we have our headquarters in Malta. We've been here since 2004, and it's a lot of competence within the Maltese regulator. They have been working with this for a long period of time. It's a big industry within the country. It's an important industry within the country, and we see a very good dialogue between the regulator and the operators. And that by no means that the Maltese regulator is not a tough regulator. They are a very tough regulator. But the dialogue is there, and in some areas you can really sense that we work together towards that common goal.
True. And if we look at it from a broader perspective, what role does the operator have in all of this to self-regulate? Is it possible to self-regulate as well? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, self-regulate is, when you are in a regulation, you follow the regulation, and then of course it depends on what you mean with self.
Let me rephrase the question. So let's say that there are markets that are not regulated yet.
Yeah.
Do you as an organization have a responsibility to make sure that you do it right at this stage, before you end up kind of having too strict regulations because it wasn't possible to protect the consumer without that regulation? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think to some degree, I would say it's a definition question, but all markets are regulated in some shape or form. I think there are very few companies or markets that don't have some sort of regulation. I think even if you take Malta as a framework, that is that everything that is happening on the Maltese license is licensed and regulated in Malta. So then the question is if it's locally regulated or internationally regulated. But I think what you have to do as a company is, we can call it self-regulation. I mean, you have to do what is right for the customer. You have to be fair to the customer. You have to protect the customer, and that every single regulator tells you to do. So just because a regulation can differ between the various regulators, you still have to have an internal standard on how you protect your customer, how you work with responsible gaming, and so forth. And you have to have that to a really high standard, because that is what is both expected and required on you today. And I think everyone who works, for example, in our company, really expect us to have a very high standard within those important questions. And that is also what external stakeholders and everyone expect from us.
Yeah, and I think Betsson has been leading the way in a lot of ways throughout the years in kind of the ethical side to the approach that you have been taking. And now, especially in this day and age with Corona situation and people losing their job, obviously staying inside and things like that, do you think that you as an operator have an even greater ethical responsibility to make sure that you don't go too aggressive in the market right now?
Yes, I think so. And something we have been doing, for example, is that we have increased the interactions with our customer when it comes to proactively reaching out in regards to responsible gaming and so forth. It's a significant increase in communication. And you need to be sensitive over this the situation. But it's also, we should still be proud of what we're doing, what we're offering. We are very proud gambling operator, and we give a lot of entertainment to our customers. This is fun, and also, of course, now we can see that in some verticals we see that we get more players playing, and in some less players. But the way you treat the customer should always be the same, regardless of, I think we have always been fair to the customer. We have always done a protective approach when it comes to player protection. And now in this situation, we do it even more, and it's important.
Yeah, it is important, I think, and also I think there's been some agreements I saw in the UK market. I know that some operators there kind of bonded together to actually decrease their exposure within TV and radio and things like that. What is your opinion on that type of stance? Do you think, is Betsson looking into doing similar things? Or?
Yeah, I think it's good in general when operators come together and drive those initiatives jointly. And when you look at the big operators, both in UK and Sweden and so forth, they are very serious, highly regulated operators. Most of them also listed on various exchanges that also requires that you operate in a certain way and so forth. And I think sometimes it's hard from an outsider to understand how highly regulated the gaming industry is. And I think just going back to our own situation with 12 different jurisdictions, there is always an audit going on, and that is from everything from not just play protection, but AML and so forth. And we are very, very scrutinized. We are like a bank, when it comes to security, even more. So we have a lot of things that we need to adhere to. And I think sometimes, I don't think the industry have been explaining this well enough. Because if that was more of a common knowledge, I think the perception of what we're doing would be even better.
Yeah, I think it seems to me, at least, that is a little bit of the problem here is the perception, right? Which is some operators, a few operators in the Swedish market, for example, went way too aggressive. They was way too prominent. It was way too aggressive in the kind of, and it kind of zippered into the Swedish culture in a really negative way. And that is, I think, where companies like yourself have kind of the opportunity to reverse that, right, and to change the perception of what gaming is from this negative perception to an entertainment-led industry, like you are saying. Yeah. What do you want to do to change that perception? Let's say, what is the key?
Well, it's actually not just to work with the regulator, but I think the industry in itself has to come together to a higher degree than what has happened in the past, because it's still in relative terms a fairly young industry. If you look at the digital side, I mean, gambling has been around forever, but online gaming has not been around that long. And that means that many of the operators have had tremendous success throughout the last 10, 15, 20 years, and it was very much to themselves in this. And I think what we see more and more today is the shift from being the competition to being more of a colleague, and I think nowadays there are also those associations that are forming in the various jurisdictions, and the operators are definitely speaking more to each other today, and really share much more of the same view, while a few years back it was much more about the competition in itself. So I see that is progressing, but I think we can do even more, and then come together as an industry and work in a very good way with that. But I also think the perception also differs from where you are, and you know, we're both Swedish, and there is a certain perception in Sweden which is very different, for example, from the perception here in Malta, where I would say gaming is a very important part of the economy. It's high up on the political agenda. It employs a lot of people in the country, and generally it's giving back a lot to the country. So the perception is significantly better than in Sweden, where we are coming from a period of monopoly, where foreign operators that are quite Swedish have been operating from different jurisdiction based on European law, which is very important, and then have been seen as a foreign type of operator. But then it was more a question of freedom of choice, which is also something very important from a consumer point of view. So it's a different perception in different countries, but in general, it's not, I would say, an industry that necessarily has a very good perception, and that's a shame, because there's a lot of good things happening within the gaming industry, and the gaming companies are working very well in the local communities and doing a lot of good work as well that is not always lifted up.
No, absolutely, and Betsson being one of them who takes great responsibility, and I think the perception of Betsson as a brand has always been positive in my opinion. When even in the Swedish market, it's kind of, in my opinion, it is almost seen as on a similar level as Svenska Spel and so forth. You've done a great job with that. What would you say? What would you say is another operator that you admire?
An operator that I admire. I think
we are friendly here today, right?
We are friendly.
Yeah.
You know, I can say like this. I play myself. I love this industry, and I like to play as well. And where I play most on the sports side of things is Bet365. I think they have a great sports product, and that's somewhere I played. I used to play poker in the past, and then definitely it was PokerStars. So I guess I can say that they have a great poker product, and on the sports side, I go for Bet365. I try a lot of companies though. I obviously have an interest in that from a professional point of view, but also from a private point of view. So, but I already said two.
Yeah, fair enough. Both of them being friends of ours in Malta here as well.
Yes, yes.
We have a question actually from Philip Roy, who's asking what is the Betsson's approach for new markets, and which ones are on the radar at the moment?
So geographical expansion is part of our strategy. So we always look to new markets, and in particular, that is regulated markets or markets soon to be regulated. So I can't speak about, for obvious reasons, being listed company, about initiatives that are not being communicated yet. But we have a lot of people involved in the expansion side, and we look at the range of markets. I can say some of the things we have done lately. One of the last things we did was we looked at Brazil. We did a minor strategic acquisition there, a brand called Suaposta. Today, it's the only company there that has a license. It's a horse racing license. But in a year or two, we believe that Brazil will regulate fully, and we want to have a good starting point there, though. So that's one example of a market we recently looked at.
Very interesting. Brazil, here we go. So on that note, you mentioned that you acquired a new operator over in Brazil. I'm really curious to know. It's actually a friend of mine. We spoke a little bit before this podcast started. A friend of mine, shareholder in Betsson, he was really curious to ask you a little bit how it works when you start looking at acquiring a new a company, basically an operator. How does it work? Kind of like how do you find the synergies? How do you come up with the right price? How do you make a deal? How do you make an acquisition?
Yes, I mean it's a range of different things you look at, of course. But to take one step back, and I just go, we have throughout the years we have said, we will grow both organically and through acquisition. So there has been a range of acquisitions that have happened, let's say the last 10 years mainly. I think the first larger acquisition was BetSafe around 2011, give or take. I believe you were working there yourself then, weren't you?
I can tell you a funny story. That was how I came to Malta, actually. I was offered a job at both Betsson and BetSafe, and I chose BetSafe. And my second day at work, the acquisition was announced in Malta. Okay. So I always was joking that I chose BetSafe, so Betsson realized that they have no chance now but to acquire BetSafe.
Exactly. If you
yes, I remember that very well.
And if you can't beat them, join them, or whatever they say. But yes. But I was not in Betsson myself then. I started in Betsson in 2013. But the last 10 years has still seen several acquisitions. So it's a part of the strategy to grow, and you can get various things in an acquisition. You can either look at the new market and see you want to have a foothold in a new market, you don't have it set up yourself, so it could be a good way to do geographical expansion on, for example. It can be to consolidate your position in a range of market and of course take great market share by doing that. I think when it comes to synergies, it depends always from case to case, of course, but you obviously look at the operational synergies and technology synergies. In the past, it was very outspoken, the Betsson strategy to buy companies and migrate them technically to the core platform in Betsson. And how do you create the synergy for that? Yes, of course, the cost to run a platform is quite high, and to run a range of platforms is obviously even higher. But what also works many times is that when you add more volume onto your systems, you will see that the price per customer, so forth, goes down in a very good way. So from that point of view, that is a volume game. When you look at the synergies and whatever it is, there is also, of course, the market mix of the company. There is today valuations that differ depending on, is it a locally regulated market or an internationally regulated market, and how does that look? And you usually put some sort of multiple on the profit from those markets that you use as a leading star for it. But it's the financial model may be very similar for how you calculate those things, but there are, of course, a range of different things that plays a role here, from as I said, the geographical expansion, if there is technology synergies, or if you buy technology that you don't have. For example, we made another acquisition a few years ago of a horse racing company. We didn't have a good horse racing product, so that was something, instead of building it, it was bought and integrated to all the Betsson brands. So it differs a little bit from case to case. There was a time when we were not actively looking at acquisitions because we had to look more internally to become more efficient. if I say it like that, a few years ago. But now recently we then announced that we are on the market again, and we are looking to acquire more companies. And the last acquisition was integrated 16th of April, and that was the business to consumer arm of GIG, which has some really exciting brands. The big one is Rizk. Then you have Guts, Thrills, and Kaboo as well, though. So that was actually just two weeks since the closure of that deal.
Yeah, and another part in this as well is the culture, I guess, internally when you move over kind of the workforce and from one company to the other, and that's something that I can relate to at that time when I was working at Betsafe. Is that at that time I think Betsson was slightly bigger than Betsafe in terms of employees, but they were fairly equal. Let's say I think it was something like 250 at Betsson and 150 at Betsafe, and that the merger that happened was quite turbulent in a lot of ways in how the teams integrated with each other. Is that always a consideration nowadays when you look forward?
Yes, it is, and I think like most companies do, you learn a lot in those processes, and hopefully you learn from your mistakes, not just in a situation like that, but for any type of situation, and you become better at doing those things, and you also, as you say, I mean, it's not just about technical integration and the financial transactions. It's always about the people and understanding what it is that made those businesses successful also before an acquisition was happening, and how that can be maintained and even helped further. So culture is an incredibly important part of that, and you need to have a very strong company culture in order to be able to do those things. You need to also believe in your own culture, but have an understanding and respect for what made the other company successful, and make sure that you're not by any means destroying that in the process.
Yeah, true, and that's another thing that I would say that you have done really well since you took over as the CEO of a company. You have really improved the culture at Betsson, and it seems to be it seems from an outsider point of view now to be one of the if not the most thought of the company to work for. You've won a number of Employer of the Year awards and these type of things. And what would you say is kind of the secret there? I mean,
it's not about me by any means. I think we have a great team here in Betsson, and of course, I've been working a lot with Pontus Lindvall in Stockholm as well, and we're defining plans together. We have a great management team both in Stockholm and here in Malta. We had to do a range of changes. I think we got in some fantastic highly skilled people, and together we have worked really, really hard to change a range of things in the organization, and it has been going. I think it has been going really well. And also when things start to change and people start to believe in what is happening, it becomes a very powerful situation that kind of escalates further and further, and kind of success feeds success in that sense, and that has been important for us. But it's very much down to the team and a lot of really talented people in the company. We have been fortunate to have them working with us, and that has also helped to attract other talent as well. So it's not something, it takes time, and step by step you need to allow time to happen in order to create the culture. But culture and leadership is incredibly important, and it goes down to also making sure there is ownership, there is accountability within the organization. So everyone going to work feel that they can both be proud of what they do and that they own the task that they are having. If it's a bit uncertain and not clear, then you don't get the engagement that you're looking for.
Yeah, and on that note, there's been a lot of talk recently. Now, when everyone is seeing kind of how well this remote working situation is turning out to be, there's a lot of talk about like what will happen when the situation becomes better. Will people come back to work? And if this is now proven that yes, that we can have a workforce working remotely and productivity can stay the same or even better in some cases. Does that mean now that a function for an office will be different? And how do you, in that case, also instill company culture in the company?
Yeah, I think. I mean, to some degree, it's a bit early to say, but this situation speeds up a lot of things, and perhaps even, let's say, in general, digitalization across industries will, of course, get even more focused where it haven't had enough focus. But to work from home during this time has been going almost surprisingly well. I have to say, the productivity has been very, very good. But I think maybe that is also, of course, due to the situation we are in. You know, there is restrictions on going out and so forth, and that makes you have something to do at home all the time when you have a job, and that's why the productivity is there. I also believe there is a great value with social interaction, people sitting down in real life, in person, and solve problems and work together as well. So you can't get away from that in this. I think for certain roles, they would definitely open up flexibility to work more from home, and in general, that is, of course, an increasing trend, but still a little bit early to say to say how things will look in a few months' time.
It's you have a good point. So I think one of the questions now, which is kind of turning up on people's radar, is is this an opportunity as being located in Malta as a large organization? It's not always perhaps the easiest to ask people to relocate here, especially perhaps in the senior segment. Difficult to move your families here and so forth. Is this perhaps an opportunity, let's say, to hire staff who might not want to commit to moving to Malta straight away, let's say?
Yes, to some degree it is, but it also depends very much on the role, because there is an onboarding process you have to go through, and you have to get into the company and understand how everything is working, which you can do to some degree, of course, only through digital and Skype and everything else around that. But there is more to it. There's more to it as well. But I think there is definitely more an openness to that, and each and every company, including our company, will need to ask ourselves a few questions after this: how we can work in the most productive way going forward also.
Yeah, because I think if I were to guess and look into a crystal ball and say what will happen, I think that this will open up the. I think this will open up the opportunity for people to kind of not work full time in the office, let's say, but a much more lenient strategy when it comes to working remotely, as long as you can prove that your output is there. So, for example, what I mean, kind of, if you want to hire someone who currently lives abroad, it could mean that that person would be able to kind of work half of the time in Malta, half of the time somewhere else, for example. I think those are more what I think will happen as we move forward.
Yeah, and I think it also it will be very different from company to company as well, because if you're a smaller company, it's easier to have that level of oversight. But when you come up and you're more than 1,000 employees and so forth, you need to make sure that you also have a very good control of how things are happening, from security reasons to output in general. But I think the current situation definitely will make companies look into those things much more than what was done before. But let's see in a few months.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Yes, yeah, I must say it is. We've only been in this situation for like a month and a half or a little bit longer, but it feels like we've been in this for a year. I mean,
Yes.
it's incredible. So just imagine, like in 2 months' time, 4 months' time, we will obviously be in a completely different situation than we are at the moment. It's worth to remind yourself that sometimes that we've only been here for 1 month and a half.
Yeah, it definitely feels longer. I have to say, and I'm in the office today here, for example, and it's no people here, and it's an odd feeling. You're used to a great buzz, a lot of people everywhere discussing.
Yeah,
you feel the energy, and when going around in an empty office, it's not as nice.
no, for sure. What are you doing to keep your employees engaged at the moment?
We have been doing a lot of things digitally. I think, firstly, a lot of the managers have made sure, that we have everything from, daily Scrum meetings to go through things, what is going to happening, and follow-ups on that. But we also do things like poker tournaments. We do lunch, yoga, stretching exercises, and people are tuning into this. So we're trying to find initiatives that are working well, and we have also gone out with a survey to the organization to make sure, basically how does the organization feel, how are you, and one thing that made me really happy was that 90% said that they still feel the Betsson spirit while working from home. So
Great.
So that was great to see. Actually, I would say it was almost 95% that said that it goes well or really well to work from home as well, though. So far so good from that point of view.
Yeah, it's an interesting time now, I must say, because as it's happening now week per week, because what I have noticed, at least, I'm in a lot of kind of Zoom meetings and things, is that in the beginning it was very much a novelty around the situation, that people were excited about what was happening, almost kind of like a honeymoon type thing. Now we're going to work out 3 times a day. I'm going to learn to speak Chinese and whatever. But I can tell now when I'm in meetings that the spirits are slowly decreasing. Let's say the reality of the situation is sinking in to a lot of people right now, and I think that. I think that now is the time to kind of be aware of the organization's kind of mental state, and especially for those who are a bit more vulnerable. Is that something you guys are talking about as well?
We are absolutely, and we are following up on those questions as well, because I mean, for anyone there is a very different situation, and let's not forget why we are in the situation we are in, right? It's affecting the society and everyone in the society, and if you're not affected yourself, it could be your family, your friend, and so forth. And most people now actually tend to know someone who has been hit by it in some shape or form. So it is a very, very severe situation, and that has of course been sinking in. Then to be locked inside is not good for mental health for a long period of time either. And I think as an employer you need to understand that, you need to be able to see how you can support wherever there is support support needed, and that's why we have been doing those type of survey research in order to understand the situation even better for our employees.
Yeah, and I think do you work with the Richmond Foundation as well?
Sorry. Yes, we do.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I would recommend that to anyone who's listening who is kind of in an organization that perhaps do not have that support, is to contact Richmond Foundation if you're based in Malta. It's an NGO that that is there for your employees who are in need of mental health, and also to educate your organization in how to communicate and understand early warning signs and those type of things within your organization. So I can really recommend that. They are a fantastic organization. And I'm happy to see as well that I know the iGen members, the organization is supporting Richmond Foundation, I know. And they really deserve that, especially in these times, because they are incredibly busy right now, I know.
Yeah, no, indeed. And as you say, with iGen, that is one of the main areas that have been discussed and is being focused on throughout that. So it's good. They're doing a fantastic job.
Brilliant, Jesper. As we are running over today, it's incredible how time flies with these things. I have one last question for you, Jesper. Where do you see Betsson in 5 years?
Sorry, in 5 years?
Yes.
I think in 5 years' time, I think we have been doing really well in regards to, we are working so much to improve our products. We are going into a range of new markets. So I definitely see us in a much stronger position than today. And I'm really positive, really genuinely positive about where this company is going and all the opportunities out there, even in a time like this, because this time will also go over, but the prospects for us in 5 years' time looks very good.
Yep. I can only agree from an outside point of view, and it comes from the consistency, obviously, in building this brand for a long time. And congratulations once again for the good work that you and the team have done.
Thank you, Pierre.
Yeah, thank you, Jesper. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks everyone who tuned in as well. Really appreciate that, and I wish you a great day, Jesper.
Thank you, Pierre.
Great.
And stay safe, everyone. Take care.
Take care.